But I think what's really unusual about what NextHaus does is that we really help our clients as like a concierge as well, with not only just helping them with the architecture, design, landscape, and AV, but really like the outside consultants that really bring so much to the table with the home building process that clients don't know how to find. And we like to make sure we're helping our clients get all the people they need to really help them build the home.
And actually the best people too. For them.
And the best people.
Because they can call, like I'm at Wintrust, we do lending across the nation. There's other companies that do lending, but maybe they don't do it so well, or maybe their advice isn't as specific as it should be. So you're right, there's people out there in all different disciplines, but are the right ones for the project.
And NextHaus, we love working with you because you're not only the best expert in what you do, everything mortgage, but you love architecture, you love design, and you love collaborations. And I think a lot of people think they're collaborative in the home space, but they're really not. And I think you speak our language in terms of home design and architecture, but you bring to the table the very daunting, intimidating aspect of like, how do you even start with getting a mortgage? How do you start with financing a home and loans and all these things that I think many of my clients, they're so excited about the architectural side and the design side, but they're really scared about the whole financial side, and it's very daunting and intimidating.
Well, first of all, a step back. My father was an architect, so growing up I was around architecture projects, going to construction projects. For a while, high school, college, I worked for him in project management. So I have an appreciation of how important it is to put all the pieces together well, so that the project will go smoothly, so that when we're talking to people up front, it's interesting, you'd ask people a lot of times, so what do you think like your budget is to spend? And doing this for quite a long time, and we've seen costs obviously go up post-pandemic, and what's realistic, what the project's actually going to cost. So they might say, I'm assuming I'm going to spend $2.5 million, let's say. And I'm like, well, let's plan on more like 3 to 3.5. Because the thing about lending is, if you're borrowing the money and you don't need to borrow it all, you're not paying any interest. So trying to build in collars around it and unexpected cost increases and extras and change orders, hopefully with a good team like NextHaus, there's not that variance as much because of the collaboration, but still to plan for things where maybe you have your core list of things, but then you kind of have your wish list items. So we're also building in, is it realistic to maybe all those wish list items or part of those wish list items? And I really love to see how excited people are about building their dream, whether it's a primary house, second house, whatever it might be, and we can do this across the nation. So you might have worked with them before for their primary house, now all of a sudden they're building the second house in Massachusetts or Michigan or Arizona or whatever, so we can help them anywhere. But the enthusiasm is really what gets me. Their excitement about trying to get their dream to be built, and knowing that the people on this team know what they're doing, collaborate well, communicate well. That's the really key, because you could have a really good architect over here and a really good designer over here, really good builder over here, and you have a lender that none of them know. That doesn't mean they're necessarily a bad lender, but they're not really communicating together to say, this is actually what it's going to cost. Can they do these things? Can they afford these things? Do they have to have these things in order for the project to come together? So you have to have a basic knowledge of construction. What's the process? I can explain the process for accessing the money during the project, and we always have a conference call at the end of, when we close on the financing to start the project, between our group that funds the draws, the builder, the client, so they all kind of know what the process is. So the communication and basic knowledge of construction projects and building and costs, it really helps, I think, calm the client to know, okay, I have people that know what they're doing. They're not trying to sell me something. They're trying to address what I really want, bring out what I really want, and how can we finance this? And it could even be, I want to pay cash for this. I'm like, well, I still think you need a construction escrow. This is why. They're protecting your title. They're making sure all the subcontractors are paid. So it's not just, hey, let's get you a loan. It's like, do you want a loan? Is a loan even right for you? And if it's not, there's still things we can advise on to make sure that at the end of the day, when their place is built, everyone's been paid, everyone's happy, the client's happy, and they know when they move into that house, they won't have issues post moving into the house.
And I think it's just so interesting, like when you think about, I think the world is more on board now with the whole collaborative team concept in terms of when they're building a home, finding the architect, the builder, and the designer. And like my clients coming to me and saying, you know, who do you really work well with? Who's going to understand my style? Who's going to work well with me? And wanting a really collaborative team. But I think what's amazing is so few people think about telling their clients, well, there's this whole other side that's really important that we collaborate with, right? It's not just the home building side, it's the financials. It's like, you know, so the fact that you can kind of come into this and lend that to us and to our clients is huge, because then we might be able to help them kind of price engineer some things to make things more worthwhile. And it seems like an obvious, you know, facet of kind of what we're all doing, but it's so unusual, I think, for the architectural team to say, oh, and, you know, here's somebody amazing you can work with on your mortgages and your loans, but it really does seem like it should be much more organic.
Yeah, and also, too, you can tell, for instance, sometimes I'll talk to 2 or 3 disciplines. Let's say they talk to several of them, and you have, like, the numbers should be somewhere in this range, right? A little bit of variance. But if you have somebody way up here, or you have somebody way down here, those are usually red flags. If they're way up here, they're super busy, they really don't need this project. If you're willing to pay way over here, they'll fit it into their schedule.
Sure.
And this person over here has not read the plans and specs and hasn't priced it out correctly. And there's going to be this price creep that's very stressful for clients, because if they had taken the people that are actually really realistically bidding it out and knowing what the project entails versus this person saying, I'm going to get the project, and then there's going to be all these change orders and cost extra. It's very stressful for a client, because wait a second, I was counting over here, and now you end up actually being more expensive than the professionals that really
Sure.
know what they're doing
Yeah.
and really know how to price out something to kind of reduce the stress for clients too, because
Absolutely.
that is stressful to people where they're kind of have this vision of a budget, and all of a sudden it's 2 times the budget. I've
Yeah.
had examples where there was one where there was a couple people that were bidding on it. They picked somebody else outside the area significantly, and they basically made the comment, it's like taking 2 houses and sticking them together. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, and I couldn't tell them specifically not to use that builder. But what happened is about 25% into the project, they truly realized this builder did not know what they were doing, ended up letting that builder go. Then the next person that came in had to undo everything that was done, because they couldn't assuredly say this was done well. It's not like taking 2 houses and sticking them together
Yeah.
for structural and you know, HVAC systems and so on. So it ended up costing significantly more to undo and then do
Sure.
the house the way it should have been done. So when you get those kind of outliers, I can't say, oh, this person's horrible, because I don't know if they're horrible, but when they make comments like taking 2 pieces and sticking them together, you're like, uh-oh,
No.
that's a total red flag. You may want to reconsider that. I'll say you may want to like talk to them more specifically and make sure they actually are bidding on what's been drawn, what's been spec'd out, and they're actually doing a professional job. Because it takes a
Yeah.
really long time for a designer to design the house correctly, to have a builder properly bid out the house to all their subcontractors. It's like, you know, 6-8 weeks of
Easily.
time to kind of get this pulled together. So you have to be respectful of that. But if they're in this number of range that is realistic, there's a value to that.
So I think one thing I think is a huge misconception and issue with our business is, like, when I'm helping my clients, they're looking at bidding out different builders, for instance, to build their home, getting a really good idea of apples to apples, because it, like you said, I mean, it takes for if a builder's really going to go through the correct process of detail bidding a home, like bidding out every tile we've specified, not just putting a low allowance on it and saying
Right.
it's this per square foot, but to really look at, like, every tile we've designed, you know, we've picked for the project, like actual, like, what is the labor on that tile to install? Because it's not so easy to install, it's, you know, and not as basic. It's very, very, very hard for clients to get an accurate assessment. And I think the same thing with designers. If clients are looking at 2 different interior designers, it's very hard to get an apples to apples bid, which is why we try to help our clients at NextHaus really understand the value of what each person brings, because we also think, you know, a designer can say, I'm this out per hour or this per hour, but how many hours are they taking to do
Correct.
the same project? So we try to help with, you know, we're this group of professionals. We've all been in business for ourselves for over 25 years. And we know what we're doing, and we're experts, and we all really work well together. So, why it might make sense to, use Burley and Builders, who's like on NextHaus Alliance, and Nate Kipnis, who's the architect on NextHaus Alliance, and me and Janet McCann are the designers, because we might be a little higher or we might not with another bid, but we know what we're doing and we know the client,
It's
and we work
reliable.
really well together.
Yeah.
And we're going to work very efficiently together, because there can be so much lost
We had a
time.
meeting at our house this morning with a painter, and there's another painter coming in. One painter saying, here's what's going to cost to paint the inside of your house, like with the selections you made. The other painter's like, oh, I just charge by the hour. I'm like, well, that's great, but
How many
hours? Like, I don't. He's like,
Yeah.
well, I'll have to estimate that. So it's a very open-ended
Right.
thing, and most people want an assurity. Like, okay, and you said exactly. There was a well-known builder at the time that would always put allowances in for lighting and appliances and hardware and everything, and that would be you'd go to the studio to pick them out. And they, the lighting might be a $100,000 budget, but the chandelier they just picked out was $60,000.
Right, yeah.
So wait a second, that one item was 60, and everything else now you're at 160 total. So given realistic, and you don't have to spend that much money. It's not like, okay, you have to spend 160,000, but to know that you can get what you want, and maybe it's 120, and you plan for 160. Well, that's a great conversation to have.
Yeah, and we
just
can
like
help clients with, like, okay, this is the allowance for lighting. So I'm going to take the client and show them, this is what we can do for this allowance. Is it good enough or is it not? And then I can help the team kind of get to a place where this is not realistic. We need to up this allowance. The clients are going to want something nicer. But we're able to help them with where to prioritize, what the budgets need to be and allowances need to be for different materials and aspects of that. And the whole thing is that we're doing it collaboratively. Nate is the architect. He's the architectural expert on the team. I am not. I'm the interior designer, but he and I work really well together in terms of bouncing ideas off of each other and getting to the best possible middle ground, right? So it's just that's
a
kind of
complete
the idea.
value add, because you're collaborating with experts. You're not charging that client for that collaboration. You're trying to deliver
Correct.
something that's of real value to the client.
Right,
and
correct.
that years of experience is invaluable, because they really could pick somebody. There was another project where the house was completed. They had picked somebody up strictly because they liked their YouTube videos, and they picked this particular designer because of that. And when they presented the house and everything, it seemed fine. And then I kind of asked the builder on the side, like the next day, I go, how was everything with that? He goes, it was a complete disaster.
Right.
Because that person really didn't know what they were doing. They picked some ideas that were good, but overall the concept was wrong. And we backfilled a ton of it to make it work. But he goes, in reality, it was a real disaster.
Yeah.
And he
It
was
looked good on
and he was
film.
way too kind. He was way too kind to
Yeah.
throw him under the bus and everything. But that was somebody that had a few nuggets of maybe knowledge,
Yeah.
but there was nothing comprehensive, nothing
consistent
collaborative about it.
Yep.
And ended up costing a lot of money too, because they were kind of grasping at straws for certain things. So then the builder had to step in with the architect to say, hey, we need to sort of jump in and help this client out, because one of those pillars was not aligned.
And getting
with
back to your
everything else.
point of, it might sound like you're spending more for a certain team, but to now hire the less expensive person and have to redo everything, you're much higher. And
It's a
so by
disaster,
using
yeah.
the right collaborative team, you're able to make sure those things don't happen, because you're getting everyone's opinion coming together to the best possible solution on everything. So,
Right.
I
But on
think
the financing side, we're trying to anticipate that. We're trying to plan ahead. We're trying to talk to the architect, talk to the builder, talk to the designer, and say, okay, this is sort of their budget. Is this even realistic? And they're like, not really. We can re-engineer some things and certainly bring things down, but that if they want this, we're going to have to work with them to kind of get them what they want as their core.
Sure.
And these other things they may not be able to do. Maybe we can do it so it's phased in over several years, so it still hits their budget, but we can hit the main core points.
and help them
But-
with a long-term plan
Correct.
for how to build this
Achieve
home
that.
and send their kids to college and.
Well, it's
and
kind of
all
like
those kind of
landscaping, right?
things.
Everybody would like a really nicely landscaped house, but a key is sometimes everyone sort of over-engineers at the beginning, and then all of a sudden 4 or 5 years later, you're taking out plants because they didn't factor in how much things grow.
Sure.
So it's like, well, if you phase in and it's a 2 or 3 year phase in, it helps their budget, but also it's being done in a coordinated fashion. So at the end of it,
Correct.
it's actually the way that they envisioned it, and they're not suddenly wasting money by like, oh my gosh, we picked all this stuff to make it look perfect the day we opened the door, but in reality, 3 or 4 years later, it's way too much material.
Sure. I always tell my clients the important thing is not to be able to do every single thing on your wish list that you want when you build a home. The important thing is to plan for your wish list of every single thing you want long term, so that you make the right decisions in the start and you don't have to redo things, but also so you do the right things on the architectural end, on the HVAC end, on the electrical end, to accommodate your desires for later that you can't fit into the first phase of the
Right,
house.
yeah.
And that's really important that you have that team to help you plan that.
I agree, 100%. Hi, Nate.
Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Well, thanks for letting us pick your brain on all sorts of good stuff.
No, it's good to see you again.
Yeah. So I have a question, because a lot of our clients come to us and they have no idea how the finance works. And I get this all the time. Hey, I have $600,000 in cash and I'm ready to go. And I'm like, why are you thinking that way? Right? Like one option certainly is to get a loan and make your money don't put it all in. Cash is king, save some money.
Well, you can always also too. So when we're planning things for people's finances, the reason you'd get a loan is, again, you don't have to deploy all your cash. You can always put some cash in at the end. So if you do what's called a one close construction loan, it's a construction loan that at the end is also your mortgage. So it's an interest-only payment as you draw money for the project, and we run the money through a title company so that everyone's getting paid as they're doing their work and requesting payouts. And ultimately, the owner is the final signatory of that money going out. So, you start building the house, we close with a loan. It could be at a zero balance to start, right? Let's say you don't have to pay off another loan and they don't have a loan on the property. So it starts at zero. Every time there's a draw request, the inspection happens. Hopefully the architect's doing the inspections, which I like a lot because they have the vision of what should be happening. They have the most knowledge. And then we send that money to the title company, but we won't send it to the owner. Signs off, says, no, I'm fine with sending that amount of money. And then it's an interest-only payment for that amount. It's not the whole loan you're paying interest on, it's only that portion. Then it starts drawing up, and at the end, it will convert automatically at no cost to a mortgage, a principal interest mortgage, but then you have an option then or even down the line to pay it down. Let's say you have another house you sold. Now you have some proceeds. You want to put some towards decorating, some towards moving and furniture, but you want to pay down the loan. Or you just got a bonus or a partnership payout or whatever. You have the ability to pay down the loan at any time. Or you can even self-fund some of the draws. You're like, you know what, this next draw, we don't need to draw from the loan. I have enough money on the side that I do want to allocate some of it towards the project. I'm just going to send that over to the title company for this draw and not draw on the loan. So it's really gives you financial flexibility where you don't have to sell things, you don't have to incur capital gains on stocks and pay taxes on something you prefer not to cash in. So, and it's also based on the complete value of the house. Or if you're doing a major renovation, let's say your house is worth $1 million and you have a $600,000 loan and you want to spend $800,000 renovating it. Well, you don't have enough equity in that house at that point to borrow the $800,000, but we look at the plans and specs and go value it through an appraisal on the future value. What is it going to be worth when you finish it? And we'll lend money in that draw process based on the future value. So it takes the stress out of them having to come up with $800,000 because you said in that example they may only have $600,000.
Well, and
so how are they going to do that?
The thing that I find is people that have never done this, and it's like people do this once in their life. I mean, it's
Once,
lucky when
maybe twice.
Yeah, we've had some repeat clients. We had a 4 repeater, which was pretty wild. But
yeah.
Usually, if we get a double, that's really good. But most people, it's the first time they're ever even thinking about this. And the issue is, let's just use that $600,000 example. In my mind, the worst thing is they actually think that that's what they're going to use. And then when extras inevitably come up, they just lose their minds. And when you have a loan, the way you structured it, where you go even higher than that, so they have a little cushion, they pay, you don't draw it off if you don't need to.
If you don't need it, right.
Yeah.
You don't pay interest on something you're not using.
So I would love for more people to understand that, because I think this is the big mystery, is that people don't understand how a construction loan works, rolling it into a mortgage.
And there's a lot of places that don't do this. The larger financial institutions don't offer this at all. They don't even want to deal with it. If you go with kind of a mom and pop, smaller company, like there is one as an example. So, you know, interest rates change up and down. So it's my like asterisk comment. But like a mortgage brokerage company, they used them for their mortgage, but they didn't have the expertise for the construction. So they found a place for it, but the interest rate they were going to charge the client was about 8.5%, and they were going to charge them a 1% fee, administrative fee. So the builder and the architect were like, well, wait a second, time out. I'm not a financial expert, but that doesn't sound like a good situation. So they referred him to me, and that same situation was like 6%, 6 and 8%.
Huge difference.
And there was 0 points charged, 0 fee of the loan amount charged. So financially, that was a big difference, and it's a much better situation. It's a direct lender. We're communicating with the architect, the builder, the interior designer, the various trades. We have a draw team that probably has an average experience when the money's going out the door to the title company. The average person there has worked for Wintrust for 15 years. So some newer, some 25 years, 30 years. So they really know how to do this and get people paid and get every person that's doing work on your house, they want to get paid usually every 4 or 6 weeks. And the longer that takes to fund that money, the more uncomfortable those people have because they're working like, I need to get paid for my work. Sure. So if it's done efficiently and smoothly and the client is the final signer of that money going out the door, they feel in control, which it is ultimately their house. They're paying the bill, they're paying the interest on this loan. So it makes them feel more comfortable that they do have control over this.
So let me ask you the other big question is, when can you appraise a project? In other words, my understanding, and maybe I'll learn something today, is when we get done with design development drawings, and so this is the plans, the elevations, usually renderings, lighting and electrical, a whole bunch of stuff, and then we have a preliminary bid from a contractor, from our guy, Brilliant Builders. With that, you have the plans that can be looked at, you have a bid that's broken out. It's not the final construction document.
No, it's not the working drawings.
You can get that initial construction loan based off of that.
Yeah, the biggest thing is that the specifications, like what you pick for your countertops, your lighting, cabinetry, or if the allowance is realistic, and that's what Laura had said too. Like you have to have realistic numbers.
Sure.
Like, what do you really want? What do you really want for your materials? What do you want for your lighting? What do you want for your countertops? What do you want for your flooring? What do you want for your windows? So there's such a wide variance of what you could pick. So having the level of finishes that you're actually going to pick makes it much better because then the appraiser can look at that and go, okay, if you build this house in this area with those materials, and they look at other houses that are in the general area and those levels, they can appraise the house accurately. So the biggest thing is the plans, the specifications, the cost estimates, and I actually recommend people do not sign the contract with the builder till the appraisal's back, because if there's a disconnect there, or like we can lend you X amount of money, which could be more than they need, or it could be the opposite, you can't quite get enough from that. There's an example of one where they're building a really nice house in the southwest suburbs of Chicago, and it's definitely a higher end than that area. It's a nice area, but this is a little bit on the high end of it. So the appraisal came in probably very appropriately, but it's not enough for them for this project. So fortunately, they have a place, a second one in Wisconsin, that had hardly any debt against it. So we came up with some creative solutions. We also said you could borrow some money against your stock account without selling the stock. And we took those pieces, and he is going to get a substantial bonus next year. So he could start the project now, kind of lock in the costs, and then when he gets that bonus money, he could pay off the mortgage in Wisconsin, or he could pay down the line of credit on his securities. So we put a plan together that got them now going on it, knowing that they're not going to be under financial stress because they already have planned for what's going to happen going forward. So just having that collaboration and asking a lot of questions and just being enthusiastic and listening to what they're actually saying, because they don't know necessarily the right questions to ask. They've never built a house. They don't know the architect.
Most people have never done this. It's such foreign terrain, and they kind of base it on like, oh, I saw a movie about someone building.
Or my
a home
friend said
or
this,
something,
or my parents said this, or my neighbors
Yeah,
said
and
this,
it's-
and it's maybe part of it's
and a lot of
accurate.
horror stories with that too.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole notion of NextHaus is to take all of that away.
Yeah.
So,
And some people will totally get it and understand the value of experts that know what they're doing. Actually, in some cases, will really save them a lot of money because we'll avoid those disasters
Sure.
or mistakes or misbids where things are completely out of alignment with what the client's expectations were. So having the people that, I mean, I could, without mentioning names, if I see a name, I don't necessarily know every single builder and every architect and designer,
Well,
but
yes, you do.
no, I mean, but at the same time, when you see people and you recognize their names, you go, this person knows what they're doing. This person knows what they're doing. You already know the project's probably going to go well. If the client's expectations are reasonable, so let's start with like that. And then if you see those names, you're like, okay, this project's going to happen. This project's going to finish pretty much on time. It's going to finish pretty much on budget. And you can always predict that by looking at the professionals that are involved in the project. And if I can bring in a professional, they don't have an architect yet. Some people do actually come to the banker first, right? They're like, I don't even know where to start.
well, there is no question you are at the very top along with the realtors, that's where people generally start.
And it's really great because then we can kind of plan what's going to happen, and then as it evolves, we can make adjustments we need to before the project starts. Because you don't want to have surprises as much as you can avoid them during the project. And that's why people will build a second time, maybe build a third time. We're like, we want to build a second home. This works so well, Nate. Do you go out to Massachusetts? You go, of course I do. Or Arizona, of course I do. And we're a national bank, so I can lend anywhere in the United States. It just has to have an American flag on it, and I can lend. So it's cool when people come back to you, or they refer you their friend or their partner in their law firm or whatever it is. It's the highest validation because they trust you. They know that you will not steer their friends and family and colleagues wrong.
That's what all of us are trusted advisors, and it is when you can get to that level where they trust you and they're looking for guidance from you.
And you have to care. You have to care. This morning, before we started this interview, I had 2 people buying houses, and actually one may be renovating the house, but I don't go to every single closing. I can't necessarily go to the closing in California, the one in Maine or whatever, but the ones around Chicagoland, I drove out to Crystal Lake for one closing, and this one was starting about the same time as the other one. I still made it all the way to Northbrook because I wanted to see those other clients. And I knew the one was going to take a little longer because they were closing in a trust. They had to run around, do some things for the trust. So I knew I'd sort of timed it. So I went to the Crystal Lake one first and then scurried over. But the fact that you see people saying, you got it, you have the house and so on, they either hand them the keys or virtually hand them the keys. It's like that's what it's all about, seeing people happy. Or when the house is done, I kind of walk through the house with you. Or I did one where it was in the western suburbs and it's about 80% done, and walking through with the builder and the client and seeing the house, it's like the best because they're so excited about it. And it's like that's why you do things. Yeah, you make money, right, in all of our professions to a certain extent, but you don't do it for the money. You do it because when you see how happy that client is, it's like worth everything.
Absolutely. When does it make sense to refinance? Because like there's some thought right now that maybe interest rates are going to start going down, and I'm not a financial advisor, but I sit there and think, do the project, and it will at some point it's going to go down, and then you can refinance. But what's kind of the right module for that?
We make it pretty easy. So like the 2 that happened today, we put that in like a tickler system to us, so we kind of know at what point it makes sense financially for the client to do it. And you communicate, would you want this product? Would you want to switch it perhaps if rates went down? And it simply texts me, and I go, hey Nate, remember we talked about if it gets to this number, we should probably open up that dialogue. And no one can tell you what's going to happen in the future with interest rates with 100% certainty. In general, if the Federal Reserve starts cutting their short-term rates over time, that could help mortgage rates. And construction loans are just like mortgage rates. That's what it is. It's a mortgage. But sometimes when they start cutting interest rates, mortgages go the other way. Because if they cut too fast, too aggressively, it might cause inflation.
Right.
And inflation then would cause what's called the 10-year treasury or mortgage rate to go up because they're a longer term debt. So it's not a one-to-one thing. So it's really, you have to have people that can advise you and always do what's best for the client. And I'm like, if it doesn't make sense to refinance, I said, don't do it. Or they're into their loan too much, or I had a client call me up and they had like a 2.5% mortgage. They're like,
Oh, man.
I'd like to pay off my mortgage. And most people say, don't do it, don't do it. And I asked, why are you doing it? And they said, because I've always wanted to own my house free and clear, and it's going to make me feel so good. So I said, you have enough money that you can allocate this money to pay off your mortgage, and you don't do everything in your life for a financial decision. Sometimes you do it because it makes you feel good.
Right.
So you could buy a house and live there fine, or you could build your dream house and you walk in, and if you've had a long day and you walk in your house like, wow, it's so great to be. It's so great to be home, right? It's so great to be home. It's so calming. It just makes you feel good. And that guy paying off his mortgage made him feel good. So I said, pay it off.
So when they refinance, is it like very unique to a certain client, or is it like, 1.5% or 1% triggers that, or how do you?
It's based on how big the loan is. If it's a smaller loan, you need a bigger amount to make it worth your while, because the costs are all about the same to refinance. So the bigger loan, you could have a relatively small adjustment, certainly even like 0.5%. You can say, oh, it clearly is worth it. And you can show them that, but you can also show people why you shouldn't refinance. Right. So I'd rather be the person like, wow, you're the only lender that said I shouldn't do it. I said, because in reality, it doesn't make sense for you right now. And that's just being a professional and giving people advice, and that's hopefully, they're like, wow, this person has my back. And then you have their trust, and they're going to listen to you.
Well, I did learn something today, so that's great. Thank you very much for
You're
sharing your wisdom.
Always good to see you.
Yeah,
right?
thanks.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, and look forward to keep working with you.
You're awesome. Thanks again. Sure. Hi, it's Brian Jessen. I'm with Wintrust. We're a national bank. I'm a mortgage lender for them. We can lend on primary homes, second homes, investment properties, new construction, renovation projects, anywhere in the United States. So please get a hold of me. I'd love to talk to you about your dream home or dream project. Thank you.